What's going on, everybody? Appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully, you're having a good day. So, what do I want? So, what I want to talk about here today is the fact that been a couple of interviews. I kind of want to go over some quotes that came out of uh, the sit downs with Brad Stevens, Jaylen Brown. I think one, Jaylen Brown might be delivering a bit of a warning to the rest of the league for next season. And Brad Stevens talking about kind of the state of the Celtics, why the offseason's gone the way it's it's gone the way it's gone. A lot of people looking at the Celtics as, oh, they're tanking because blah blah blah. Well, Brad Stevens addresses that and want to take a look at it with you and kind of give you thoughts on some of the stuff that was said, as well as with Jaylen Brown, because I feel like his comments are, I don't know if people are overreacting necessarily, but I don't think it's a bad thing what he said. I mean, Jaylen Brown actually, he talked with a Celtics reporter, and then he was part of like Kyrie's 24-hour live stream or whatever it was. So that's what we're gonna get into here today. So before we get into that, obviously, feel free, hit the like button, subscribe, follow, share it out, leave a comment because I do want to hear from you, like your thoughts on what I'm about to talk about. So with that, let's go ahead and we'll start with Brad Stevens. We'll start there. Hopefully you can see that. So Porzingis holiday. Well, he was asked about it. I believe this was from a few days ago. Brad tells all of us that Holiday and KP Porzingis knew what were coming. He kept them in the loop, so they weren't blindsided by anything. And it was the motivation, as Brad Stevens put it, the Celtics had to get out of the penalty box. I've done videos before talking about the restrictions, the limitations of the second apron. The Celtics just could not operate within that anymore. So that's why Porzingis and Holiday are no longer on the team. Now, if they won the title last season, maybe the approach might have been different. But if you're taking Brad Stevens at his word, it's like, and what I kind of believe, the penalties are just too much. That you cannot sustain that for multiple seasons. And next season would have been what, the third year for the Celtics in the second apron. Just too much. So just keep looking at the article here. The second apron, why the trades happen, he reiterates that. It says it's pretty obvious. The penalties are real, which he kind of said on draft night. And it goes into limitations with the soft salary cap, the luxury tax line, everything like that. Celtics dealing with the penalties, financial, basketball related, everything like that, blah blah blah. And once again, under the second apron was the priority, and emphasizing priority by saying necessity for the Celtics, stating even if Tatum didn't go down, these were moves that probably were going to be made anyway. So I feel like people thinking that Tatum tearing his Achilles fast tracked this kind of direction. No. Stevens in the front office, you kind of have to plan out a couple of years ahead. They knew that going into the second apron, they gave themselves a couple of year window to pay it off with the title, which they did. So now, I believe Brad Stevens like retooling. You can call it whatever you want. Kind of shuffling around the financials to make yourself more beneficial for the next couple of years down the line. That's what the Celtics are going through right now. Then talk about the new owner, Bill Chisholm, which, thinking about it, like, Has that sale been actually approved yet? I don't even know. I haven't kept up with that part of it, but we all know he's eventually going to be whatever. So, talking about how Bills, wants them to do whatever they can, everything like that. I'm talking about Tatum in the walking boot. Second reason why. Jaylen Brown then comes up. Okay, expectations for next season. Compete. And I think for a lot of Celtics fans looking at this team right now, I think the question is like, what does that necessarily look like? What kind of level are they going to compete at? Are they going to be a top of the East type of team, a bottom of the playoffs, like a bottom six, not bottom six, but like bottom of the top six, playing? I mean, I don't think anybody's thinking playing, but I mean, Brad Stevens is kind of laying out there. Compete, win the next game. We know before I did a video on he's talking about pace, which I'll get into again when talking about Jaylen Brown. And I think the next part of the statement, I guess, speaks to. I know a lot of people have been wondering. Okay, so they've cut some salary. I believe they're like 400,000 over the second apron still, but that's something that could be remedied with what I think will probably happen. JD Davison probably won't be on this team next season. You take his contract off, you're now under the second apron, which once again is a necessity. But then even thinking longer term, by doing that, you go through the season, and let's say Anthony Simons finishes the year, he's an expiring contract, so you could look at a situation where next season when Tatum is ready to come back full bore, I believe at that point they would be under the first apron, taking Simon's money out next season. I guess, yeah, they'd be hovering like right around the actual salary cap. So then they can start the process over of, building up the bottom line to field another championship level type of team. So that's why obviously Brad Stevens is saying it's not a rebuild, because rebuilds usually tear it down multiple seasons. You're trying to get back to a level you once were. And obviously, depending on the moves you make, it may take even longer. Some teams, as we've looked around the league, have yet to be able to get out of rebuild mode. But retool is take a minor step back, and then you're right back where you were before. And also, a lot of people wondering if another move was going to come down. I know I did a video talking about, Hauser could be gone. Niang, who would just be coming in, might get kicked out somewhere else. Or a lot of people wondered Simons if he was going to stick around, or if they don't kind of put him in another trade, send him on out, and cut even more salary. Brad Stevens puts. It's always going to be it about competing. We got some new guys. We got some guys that'll have to take on extra in their roles. We believe in the guys that have been in the building. Look forward to getting the guys that haven't, working all together, create a team that functions well. That kind of seems like Simons, Niang, and I don't know, I guess like the draft picks maybe, or Hauser, I should say. Brad's intentions are keeping those guys for next season, which I'm not mad at. Look, Simons is a guy who can score. We know what Hauser can do from three. Shireman is probably one of those guys that he's talking about taking on extra in their roles. Shireman kind of moves up the depth chart. I don't know. White will have to take on more, because White, I guess, now becomes the second option with Brown instead of the third option when you had Tatum and Brown. So it looks like the way the roster is now is pretty much how it is, with outside of the minor move of, like I said, Davison probably cutting ties with him to get back under the second apron. Once again, retooling, not rebuilding. Always building and growing towards something. And yeah. Oh, hold on. Got more. Yes. Stevens, here we go. Talking about praising the players that they brought in. Steady scoring Anthony Simons. That's what I'm saying. Simons is a guy who can score like 20 a game and should probably be around that next season because, like I said, you got Brown, you got White. Simons is probably your number 3. It's not bad. Obviously unproven what those 3 can do together, but it's not a bad place to start. Believes he was overlooked while in Portland. I mean, Portland isn't winning, so it makes a lot of sense. Likes the competitive spirit, 3-point shooting of Niang. That's what Niang's for. Niang shoots, 41% from 3. We already know about Missoula Ball. Also, Jaylen Brown and Niang were at the Sun Fever game, so I guess the beef is squashed between them. And he also sees upside with Garza and Minot. I feel like I've heard it pronounced Minot. I don't know. But once again, those are kind of 4 players that will be, I guess, asked maybe to do a little bit more than they have previously been asked in previous spots. I guess for Simons, he's going to be looked at as more of he's going to be on a bigger stage, technically, in Boston than Portland. Boston is expected to kind of be in the championship picture, while Portland, one of those teams, rebuilding for multiple seasons now. Niang, like I said, work into the Hauser, Shireman, those kind of guys who will help space the floor from 3. Garza is going to be thrown into the front court, which is a little slim, but I'll talk about in a moment somebody I would like to see added to the front court. And then Minot, who I think plays into the pace and obviously the team getting a little bit younger, a little more athletic. So I feel like we're starting to see the method to the madness, I guess you would say, of this off season. He talks about his coaching. Okay, so that's the Brad Stevens part of this. And I guess before I get into the Jaylen Brown, because I mentioned the front court. Right now, you're looking at Keita, Tillman, Garza. I guess Minot technically probably plays the 4. So they're at those 4. Cornette's gone. He's in San Antonio. Horford's going to be gone. It looks like Horford might end up on the Warriors. I mean, it seems like Horford's market is basically Warriors, Lakers, Nuggets, or retirement. Even though part of me is like, I wonder if Horford's kind of waiting around to see if Boston could clear out maybe a little bit more and maybe he comes back. Or maybe he's really contemplating retirement and trying to decide if he wants to give it one more go around. But if he does, I wouldn't hate seeing Horford in Golden State. I wouldn't. I wouldn't hate seeing him in Denver. I guess Denver, because Denver traded for Valanciunas, but I feel like Valanciunas is now with the Kings because I think Denver traded him or something like that. So if he ends up there, fine. The Celtics fan in me, I couldn't handle Horford with the Lakers. I couldn't handle it. Even though I wouldn't hate Horford. Like Horford, how do you not love Al Horford? But I guess we'll see where he ends up signing. But Brad Stevens said before, unlikely Horford's back. Celtics are operating like Horford's not going to be back. So the front court is still thin. The person I want to see them add to the front court, if you've been watching the Summer League, Charles Bassey, number 1. I had no idea he was going to be on the Summer League because he was not announced as a part of the Celtics Summer League team until like the first game when you just saw him out there. He's got 4 years experience with the Spurs, where he played like 10 minutes a night or whatever. But just watching him in Summer League, he can rim protect, he can rim run, he's got good hands around the rim. Why not bring him in? Oh, also, Amari Williams, sorry. Got to add him to the front court, the rookie. But I don't know how much you want to necessarily put on his plate in his rookie season. So I want to see the Celtics kind of go out, bring in Bassey from the Summer League squad. Shouldn't cost that much to bring him in. So once again, you move off of Davison. I know some Celtics fans would probably say Tillman. Tillman is part of the front court, being thin anyway. But if they did that, I feel like, Celtics fans would probably feel more confident in seeing Bassey on the floor than Tillman. I don't know. But that would be my one thing for Brad Stevens. Get Bassey on the roster. I know Kenneth Lofton is kind of a fan favorite around the NBA. I just don't know. And it's not necessarily because, he's a big guy. Like if Lofton were maybe 5 inches taller, maybe. I don't know. I'd prefer Bassey over Lofton, but I mean Lofton knows how to score. I just worry. I don't know. That's just me. So now switching over to the Jaylen Brown part. So when you read like the title, it's like, hold on. There we go. Talking about Jaylen Brown says he's made a lot of sacrifices for the Celtics. I disagree with a lot of things. You read that, you're like, oh my God, Jaylen Brown is unhappy. As you kind of get through the interview and everything like that, and some of the stuff that he's saying, this is why I said at the top, I think Jaylen Brown is giving a warning to the rest of the league that thinks just because Tatum's down, like Brown's gonna, downshift and take it easy next season, not look to win at a high level. I think that's what Jaylen Brown's kind of getting at. So kind of go through this. He sat down with an interview with Noah, we'll say Dalzell. If you watch like CLNS media stuff on YouTube, you'll see who she is. But he talks about disagree with a lot of things. He's had to change roles, styles, had to do things that other players with his talent haven't had to do, and he's been okay with it because he's been a team guy. And he feels like sometimes he gets taken for granted. Now, I definitely see where he's coming from because look, much of his career he was seen as, not a good shooter, no left hand, can't play with Tatum, all this kind of stuff. Then he goes out against the Mavericks. Well, I guess against the Pacers, takes Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Then against the Mavericks, Finals MVP. Then it's like the conversation turned into Brown is better than Tatum. Brown's the alpha. Tatum isn't. And it's like he's getting a lot of love. But then Tatum goes down, and automatically the talk is, well, now let's see what Brown can do. Let's see what he's got in him. Let's see if he's really that guy. Jaylen Brown's clearly heard a lot of this. So they were loving him when they won the finals, even though I know a lot of that was directed at just hating on Tatum. But he gets a lot of love then. Then one season removed from that, now they have questions about what Jaylen Brown can do as a number one guy. So I feel like that's where the motivation is behind that statement. So talking about playing second fiddle and all this kind of stuff. Brown understood that the sacrifice led to the glory of raising banner 18, obviously. Unlikely Brown to add another title. Okay. Okay. Brown feels like very talented, one of the talented people in this league on this planet. and feel like I'm looking forward to showing the world more. So, all those who are doubting whether or not Jaylen Brown can be the guy and I guess lead a team to the playoffs, he's talking about, hey, you got questions, he's got answers for you next season. And like, this is what I want to hear Jaylen Brown say. And I wouldn't have expected anything different than this. Like, Celtics fans know Jaylen Brown is a very confident guy. He's a smart guy. And when he says something, he's not sugarcoating anything. He's meaning what he says. So when he says he's going to show the world that he has more, I fully believe he will. And once again, Jaylen Brown is a guy who, let's see, what the last season he like averaged 23. A couple of years ago, he averaged 27 a game. Um, Look at his career numbers. I think he's averaging 19, but his first 3 years he wasn't playing a lot, so that's dragging that down. But he's a 20 plus per game scorer. If you look at his numbers once again, he shoots I think like 48% from the field, and he's a 36% 3-point shooter. Like, he has obviously the ability to score at a high level. So then Kyrie's stream, he's talking about, okay, feel like people haven't seen me at my best because we have a loaded roster. And people like read that like, oh my God, he's disgruntled with the Celtics. He's like, no, he's just like, this is part of the whole sacrifice thing. Loaded roster, he couldn't just go out there and, take it upon himself to just do what he wanted to do. He had to work within the team dynamic. Something's got to do with the team, what needs to be done as a team. On a team, make sacrifices. Nothing's wrong with being a part of a team. So once again, he understood why he had to maybe not showcase all that he could do. Last season, 22-6, obviously 22. Okay, 22-1-2, 5.8, 4.5, 1.2 steals, 0.3 blocks. Those numbers should go up because he's gonna get more shots with Tatum out. Once again, Brad talked about putting more on your plate. He's probably have to rebound a little bit more, and he's gonna have to play make because the ball will be in his hands more with Tatum out. Obviously, White will play into that as well. Simons too will also do that. And this article, how weak the Eastern Conference is, Brown should still be able to lead the team to the playoffs. And okay, yeah, brief talk about the Celtics parting ways with Brown, along with Porzingis and Holiday. And I feel like that came along when everybody was like, they're just ripping this down to the studs, clearing out all the big contracts to then do it all again when Tatum comes back with, I guess, a new cast around them. Assistant General Manager Mike Zarin, which I believe was the same night when Brad talked after the first round of the draft. I think Zarin talked before him. It made it clear that Brown and Derek White weren't going anywhere. I think people were like, oh, well, they're just saying whatever. They're still members of the team. I know Derek White came out and said that he heard the rumors too, but he said the Celtics told him he wasn't going anywhere. And Derek White said he is happy to still be on the team. And then talking about it's interesting to see how far Brown and White can take them. So there you go. Those were those two interviews where, like I said, Brown, I think, will have a really good season next year. And I'm kind of happy that, at least what Brad's saying and everything like that, the team is kind of done with the major moves necessarily on this team. And now it's just going to be kind of, like I said, minor things. Like I said, Davison or Tillman. I know Walsh is a guy that a lot of people are looking at. Like, those are kind of lower price guys that you can move out, get under the second apron, and kind of call it a day. I guess the interesting also piece around this team right now is the whole Damian Lillard news about Tatum's kind of, uh, you know, recruiting Damian Lillard to the Celtics, which if Lillard wants to sign with the Celtics, then that would obviously bring about another move because they'd have to clear out space to get Lillard in. And ultimately, I don't know if that's something that is in the works for this season. Yeah, I don't know because Lillard is not in any rush to sign anywhere because he's not going to play next season. So let's just say Lillard just rehabs, and then when he's kind of ready to go, get back to basketball activities, maybe then he starts thinking about where he wants to play again. And then maybe then the Celtics, kind of go about that once again. So, yeah, that's kind of all I got for you. So, like I said in the beginning, please go ahead, hit the like button, subscribe, follow, depending on where you're watching this. For the audio side, leave a review as well as a like. But let me know what you think about the Celtics next season. Do you think Brown and White and Simons and all the way that this team is right now, where they're going to lean on those three along with Pritchard, Hauser, and then whatever the front court looks like, can they be a playoff team next season in the East? And do you agree with me that Bassey needs to be on this team? Low cost option, has experience in the league, kind of fits the vibe of the offseason. Like, why not do it? Let me know in the comments. I'll be ready to talk with you down there. And also, you can check out the profile or whatever. Look at all the socials. Follow me on the ones that you're active on. Greatly appreciate it. So, thanks again for tuning in. Appreciate all of you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Be safe. God bless. And I'll see you next time. All right. Bye.